You have to fight against homosexual behavior. The first way you can do this is by avoiding tight-fitting clothes that can identify you with homosexuality. What kind of clothes are we talking about? Some outfits are designed to feminize a man's appearance, as homosexuals try to do, especially displaying the buttocks and genitals. Why? Because it makes it harder to tell the difference between a homosexual and a heterosexual man, making homosexuals blend in. So these clothes contribute to changing people's opinion of homosexuality because they come to see it as normal and acceptable. A second way you need to keep on guard is resisting the unclean habit of masturbation. The God's Love book explains that masturbation is the stroking or rubbing of the genital organs, commonly resulting in an orgasm. So, does a person have to use their hands to masturbate? For example, say a brother wears an undergarment that's so tight it rubs his penis as he moves around. He gets aroused and even ejaculates. Is he masturbating? Yes, he is, because he's deliberately stimulating his genitals, even though he's not using his hands. Does there have to be an orgasm for it to be considered masturbation? Suppose a brother starts rubbing his genitals against a pillow. He gets an erection, but stops before having an orgasm. Is he masturbating? Yes, again, because he's deliberately stimulating himself, whether he has an orgasm or not. How about having an emission of semen at night, maybe even after an erotic dream? Is that masturbation? No. Jehovah made that a part of a man's reproductive system, and it happens without any deliberate stimulation. But even so, when this happens to you, it would be good to examine whether you were dwelling on sexual thoughts before going to sleep. Could you have been sleeping in a position that stimulated you, such as with a blanket or pillow held tightly between your legs? If you're honest with yourself about these matters, it will help you to avoid falling into unclean practices. Could persons of the same sex start to flirt? Consider a situation. A group of single brothers has a meal together, and after most leave, two of them remain behind in the room drinking alcohol. At one point, one asks the other if he has ever woken up with an erection. Their conversation starts to touch on sexual matters. Are they flirting? Their conversation can arouse sexual desires in them, even though they're of the same sex. This could easily lead to comments or curiosity about each other's bodies. Don't deceive yourself thinking this could never happen. Keep in mind that alcohol tends to lower your inhibitions and can make thoughts that you'd normally suppress or view as repulsive seem acceptable, even inviting. You have to fight against homosexual behavior. You've surely noticed that we've mentioned several situations involving homosexuality throughout this talk. Why do you think that is? Satan is desperately promoting this perverted practice. It's no exaggeration to say that he's flooded his world with propaganda in favor of homosexuality. It's not realistic to think that you can't be affected by his efforts just because you serve at Bethel. At times, you may find yourself struggling with same-sex desires, or you may realize that others are doing so. That doesn't mean that you or they are homosexuals, but it does mean that you have to keep on guard to remain holy. How can you do this? Examine your conduct carefully and honestly so that you avoid situations that can foster homosexual desires. For example, do you avoid unnecessarily exposing yourself to others, such as when you're in the locker room? Are you always modest, even in front of your roommates? Do you have the habit of excessively touching other brothers, hugging them tightly, slapping their buttocks, rubbing them, giving them massages, and so on? Of course, at Bethel, you may sometimes have to use a community shower, and that means you may not be able to completely avoid being briefly undressed in front of other brothers. In some cultures, it may be acceptable for two men to walk hand in hand, or local customs may permit the use of saunas while unclothed. But if you find yourself struggling with same-sex desires, it would be wise to honestly examine whether you need to make adjustments in your conduct with other brothers. What do you think of the following situation? After exercising together, two single brothers go back to shower in a room. Afterwards, one gives the other, who's wearing only a towel, a massage. One or both of them get sexually aroused. They have put themselves in an extremely dangerous situation, don't you agree?